All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Cumberland Fire Department. And we are going to begin with our roll call. Commissioner Rochambeau.
Here.
Commissioner Hogan is excused this evening. Commissioner Kuziani.
Present.
Commissioner Picone.
Here.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
And Commissioner Santoro.
Present.
All right. I would like to have a moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance.
Miss
So-
Phil's flag.
I'm using Phil's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, under general announcements, I'm very excited here tonight because we have our auditor report. We have Andrew Lima and Mary Sahadi who are going to present this shortly. Does anyone else have any other announcements that they need to make?
I do.
Commissioner Santoro.
I'd like to congratulate the chair on her retirement.
Thank you very much. Yay.
I'm sorry, Miss, who is retiring?
Oh, me.
Congratulations.
Why, thank you. Yes, I can go hang out with you guys now for coffee. Okay. Let's go to any other general announcements. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes from 12/15/2020. Is there a motion on the table?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Santoro. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Picone. Any discussion?
Oops.
Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from 12/15/2020 meeting, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Passes 6-0. Okay. Any other communications? Moving on to new business. We are at number 1, discussion, consideration, and possible vote to approve or accept the Cumberland Fire District other comments and recommendations letter for the year ending June 30th, 2020, to be presented by representatives of Haig, Sahadi and Company. So I'm just going to turn this over to Mr. Lima and Ms. Sahadi.
Certainly. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome, Mary. Nice to not see you again.
And I'm not sure why you can't see me tonight, but I first tried to log into the Google Meets and Andy quickly sent me the email and said it's Zoom, so I'm not sure why I'm not there. But I am still about the same as I was the last time you saw me.
Very
And
good.
I'm glad to be here with you guys this evening. I can't believe a year has gone by and we're doing this still with Zoom, but we are. So Andy was the manager on the engagement this year. And in addition to the financial statements, we did submit to you another comment letter, and I will let Andy take over from here and give you an overview of both that correspondence, which is not a significant deficiency. It's just recommendations to make changes going forward, as well as the financial statements.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So as Mary said, I was the manager on this year's 2020 audit. All the letters we've issued, that being the independent auditor's report and also the government audit standards letter at the back of the annual financial statement. Both of these letters were clean opinions, meaning we had no material findings, no material departure from GAAP, etc. That is on page 1 and 2 and 61 and 62, I believe. Your report was final and issued on January 8th, 2021. Jumping ahead to page 3, I'll take you through just really quick a little bit of the MD&A, the management discussion and analysis, and then we can go through a couple of the numbers that I thought were kind of important, and also pension and OPEB notes. So at the bottom of page 3, the financial highlights section is the section I'd like to go through. Your government-wide financial statements, which include all of your long-term assets and liabilities. So that would include your pension liability, your capital assets, etc. Whereas your general fund would not include that. That basis of accounting incurred a decrease of $926,000 compared to the prior year. And that's mostly due to that pension and OPEB liability, which is required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board to be booked into the financial statement. Net position, so you've got 1.4 million in capital assets, so that will be your building, your fire trucks, etc., which is about 103,000 less than the prior year, and obviously that's a depreciation expense. Fiscal 2020, you have revenues slightly less than fiscal 2019. With the major source of that, again, being your property taxes you would expect to see. Your governmental fund financials are where you're going to see your general fund, your operating fund. That's more of a short-term focus, so we don't have the long-term asset and liability there. You had unassigned net position this year of 265,618, which actually is reversing a prior year deficit, I should say prior 2 years. In 19, you were in deficit 371,000, 18, 282,000, and fiscal 17 was actually the last year with a surplus at 128. So when we jump ahead to the budget to actual, obviously, I think you'll see as a result of your budgetary control, you've managed to, again, create a surplus. With that said, the GFOA, so that's the Government Finance Officer Association, recommends that you have 2 months of regular operating expense in your unassigned fund balance. That would equate to about 15% of that 8.5 million budget you run, so about 1.4 million. So a strong balance sheet would have that unassigned net position a little closer to, $1 million, $1.4 million. I don't know if there are any questions so far. I just plan to jump around a bit through the financials. Okay. I'm going to jump to page 14. So pages 14, 15, and 16 are your full accrual statements. So this is the long-term basis. You've got your capital assets on there. You can see we discussed that. If you move to page 15, you're going to see the net pension liability there. That's determined by the state actuary. And you've also got your net OPEB liability, which is related to your health care. Page 17, you can see the general fund balance sheet. 265,000 was the turn back for the year on that. So you've got a surplus there. Page 19, we've got a non-major governmental fund. That's your SAFER grant. I believe that's a multi-year grant, so that'll probably continue to be shown this way in the future. This year you had 144,000 in expense on that grant. Jumping ahead to page 33. Page 33 starts your pension note. Again, this is determined by the state and their actuaries. We're required to disclose the information you see here in the financial statement and also book your liability. And this note's kind of lengthy, but page 40, you can see each one of your stations, and they essentially calculate the liability for each one of the stations separately. So in total, we book that to the financial statements on the long-term basis, of course. Page 42.
Andrew,
Yep.
question. Why
Yeah.
would you want to separate the various fire districts?
That's determined by the state. Mary, do you know exactly why they've separated that?
If you don't mind, I can interact. I believe it's separated because prior to the merge, each station had different rates and different plans. So when the merge happened, they kept them separate because the rates are a little bit different for each one.
Okay.
Well, then I assume with my very good.
I apologize, Mary, for interrupting or talking.
No, that's fine, Steve. That's exactly what I was going to say. It was during the time of the merge that there were multiple plans, and assumedly that's why they kept them separate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so, yep, so on page 40 there, if you were to add together the net pension liability, it would sum up to what's on the balance sheet there. We're going to show them combined for the numbers portion. Obviously, in the disclosure here on page 40, we'll separate them as the state's recommended. Page 42 is your OPEB plan. So that's related to the healthcare plan, which I believe is closed to new entrants, but just retirees. So that's outlined on page 43. This is based on inputs that are run through a software program, and certain assumptions are held constant year to year, and certain assumptions based on that of the guidelines of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board have to change. So this year, your discount rate was reduced because we actually have to mark that against a particular bond rating. And since all the rates dropped, your discount rate dropped. And as a result, that liability went up slightly. You can see this on page 44. So your net OPEB liability was 3.1 million at the beginning of the year. I'm in the very right-hand column on page 44. And at the end of the year, it's estimated to be 3.5 million. A lot of that has to do with the discount rate change. On page 45, you can see the required disclosure there. We're required to provide what's known as sensitivity analysis. So if the discount rate or the rate of return on your assets were to be greater than 2.7, your liability would drop. If it were to be less than the estimate of 2.7, your liability would increase. And obviously the opposite is true with the healthcare. If the healthcare costs were a little higher than we're projecting, your liability would rise. And again, this is revised every year, so it's kind of a moving target. Page 47, I think you'll be interested in, and that's your budget and the budget to actual.
Andy, before you move on, just one comment that they may not have seen before. So note 14 is the COVID-19 note. So it really just describes COVID-19, the governor's state of emergency, and basically the fact that management is now monitoring the activities of the district going forward with regard to its revenue sources and potential expenditures. This is a new note that's required this year as a result of the pandemic. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're,
Mary, question. I saw note 14. Is that in particular to this fire district or to all fire districts?
It's actually that this particular note is required in all entities this year, all governmental entities. And quite frankly, we've written the note very similarly in all of the entities, because unless somebody has something very specific as it relates to, a client has something very specific as it relates to COVID, Basically, in all instances, management is monitoring, the situation and the upcoming expenses. I'm not sure whether or not there'll be any additional significant money to local governments as it relates to the CARES Act. Certainly our new president is suggesting that there may be, and those revenues may be available to the district, and you may be able to use them for your firefighters in particular for safety reasons. Does that answer your question, Phil?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so continuing to page 47, you've got your budget to actual there. You had slightly more in revenue than you had budgeted, and you actually were quite a bit under your total expense versus what you had budgeted. Part of the reason you were so far under is the SAFER grant we didn't include here as part of the general fund, as it's technically a special revenue fund. So if you look to that contracted salaries line, that favorable variance there is almost entirely that 144 we saw earlier in the document. And as a result of that, you've got 644,000 positive turn back on the budgetary basis. There's a slight difference between this page and the gap page at 7,500, and you've worked your way out of your 371 deficit. So things are looking good. Again, the GFOA recommends, and obviously this would be an ideal position to have, is that 2 months of your operating expense, which would be 1.4 million. So maybe that's something you as a board would want to consider is a minimum fund balance policy. That would be a minimum. You can make it 10%. I have another fire district in Rhode Island that actually has a 15% minimum. And that would be very close to the GFOA recommendation. I think 2 months out of the year would be something like 16.6%. So it can be a goal that you set. I know there are different, I think Steve and I had talked about some capital items that might be coming up for purchase. So, maybe it's not attainable now, but maybe it's more of a long-term plan. Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to jump into the other comment and recommendation letter. Okay, the other comment and recommendation letter, as Mary had said, to start the meeting, we've got no material weaknesses there. So if you look to page 1, which is our letter, third paragraph down, it says, during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weakness. So nothing significant. The first recommendation we made is more of an accounting bookkeeping type of recommendation. Steve and I had discussed maybe just booking the capital assets in their own fund to keep them separate from the general fund. The general fund technically doesn't record the capital assets. That's only for one page of the financials. So it would make the bookkeeping a little bit cleaner. And the second one was the recommendation to fund your OPEB liability. This one's not always possible due to budgetary constraints and whatnot. But over time, obviously, time value of money would help you to build up OPEB assets that could be used to fund those retirees when they get to that point. So it's a recommendation that we make to just about every entity that is currently not funding an OPEB trust. And I think we've recommended the Rhode Island Interlocal, which actually is, I believe the city of Woonsocket's a member of that. There are a couple others. And they'll help you if you so choose to set up the proper trust document, officially declare it as a trust. And I believe they'll even do the investment advisory and that side of things. So I don't know if you've had a chance to read this, but if anybody has any questions, either Mary or I could, clarify.
Which page are you on, sir?
I'm in the other comment and recommendation letter, pages 3 and 4.
Oh, okay. The smaller book.
Yeah, the smaller one.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andrew, if I may,
Yep.
the document is indicating that we've done a good job this up through June 30th of 2000 and was it 19, 20,
2020, yes.
20. You know, with our excuse me. Done a good job, but you're also indicating on page 3 and 4 with this OPEB requirement, et cetera, for the future,
Yep.
that's only going to increase in total, will it not?
All right, so, yep, I see where you're coming from. So what happens when you have the trust, and maybe the easiest way to see it is if you have the financial statement and you look again at page 44. I'll give you a second to get there.
I'm there.
All right, so on page 44, you see you have the estimate for the liability in the left-hand column. And then you have the planned fiduciary net position. Now, at the bottom there, you look at the balance, you have 0. So let's say you had $1 million set aside. Your number that would flow through to the balance sheet would be now 3.5 less $1 million, and now you've got a liability of $2.5 million. And what happens is when we run the actuarial model, the discount rate is a huge driver of why this is 3.5 million. If you've got assets set aside that could earn 8% instead of 2.7, it would actually reduce the estimate of the liability quite a bit, because this is kind of like a discounted cash flow type of model. So it attempts to take all the cash flows for healthcare now until 50 years down the line and discount them to today's dollars and say this is where we stand as of today, and that number is 3.5 million. So I would say, and I don't know that Mary knows the number either of how many entities actually have an OPEB trust and are actively funding it, but I'm going to tell you, of the 15 audits that I do throughout the year, I'd say there's 3 of them that I have that are funding it. So it's more of a rare type of find, just due to budgetary constraints. You'd have to basically budget for the contribution every year into the trust. So there's advantages to it. And mostly it would be the growth of the assets would be a lot higher than just paying them every year as they come due. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mary.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. I mean, not very many are actually funding their OPEB, although there are more and more that are putting some portion in each year, even if it's a small amount. Now, Andy's right. The issue with that becomes whether or not it's enough to move the needle of the discount rate. But assuming that over time you add a little bit more than the pay-as-you-go expenditure, you're going to start to at least have a trust fund set aside. And I would agree with Andy, if you at least get the trust fund set up, establish it with at least some small amount of funding, and maybe years that you have surpluses, you could utilize some of that surplus or you could have a policy where a percentage of that surplus would go into the trust fund. So, here in this particular year, if you even had a 10% policy, you would take 10% of your surplus this year, which we just talked about, right? Which was 644,000, and you would put 64,000 in. It's a way to at least start the trust fund over time.
I may be of the old school. I don't see the discount rate going of accommodating it. I hope we can do it accordingly, and I'm hopeful in the future we're able to do something more than what we've been doing, which I think has been good, which I'm very much pleased with. But I am always troubled by this particular aspect and comparison in analogy. When I see these numbers, I have to admit, I get worried.
Yeah, so that you can see the magnitude of this in other areas. I'm the lead auditor on the city of New Bedford, and they have a number that's something like 500 million. I think Providence is $1 billion. And a lot of these are all unfunded. Again, they're just estimates as far as what an actuary has determined. And I think they really were to bring to light to the local governments as far as that this will be an issue, and there is a way to, fund this now and cut down the cost over a long duration. So while it looks like it's quite challenging to, dig out of the so-called hole, I think these type of models have obviously added a lot of advantage for financial planning. So, it's always a recommendation of ours if we don't see someone with the trust to, maybe consider opening it.
I repeat myself again, I consider myself of the old school and would love to see something along those lines in comparison to other towns and cities, which is nice in one respect, but to me, it's almost irrelevant in compared to what we have to do. And again, I say, I think we've done well. I hope that I know we will continue to do well and watch, but I've already said it 3 times. I don't want to say it again. I'm troubled.
All right.
Does anyone else have any questions for Andy or I?
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
as always, if you have any questions during the course of the year, we're certainly always here to help you out. Steve, if you have, any communications that you want with Andy or any questions, he's always willing to, either answer an email or answer a phone call. So don't feel like you're out there. Right now, there isn't really any changes in the standards coming forward, except for maybe some lease disclosures that might be, they were postponed, but they may be effective for next fiscal year. So if you have any questions during the course of the year, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
You're welcome, Cindy.
Thank
Nice
you,
seeing
Andrew.
everyone.
Hey, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you to
Great.
both.
Thank you very
Great
much.
job. Appreciate the information. And, I think moving forward, we can go through it would be important to go through your recommendations and then, make a plan based on what you're recommending. So.
Okay.
Sure. And enjoy your retirement.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good night,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay,
night.
Bye-bye,
thank you. Good night.
thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
That was really interesting. Some great news, huh?
Yes. Having a surplus is a good thing.
Right.
Yeah, definitely good news that we've been working hard towards, and not just us. We, the firefighters, the administration, everyone really kind of pitched in for this. So it was a good team effort. So I think it was well deserved, and finally, getting out of that hole, getting out of the red is a good feeling. So, but not to play Debbie Downer or anything, but we still have a little ways to go before we can say that we're completely out of the woods. So we have a little bit of breathing room right now, but we still have an aging fleet. We have to replace some apparatus soon. We have old buildings that need some work. We have this pandemic that keeps throwing curveballs at poor Chief Anderson, who's lost a couple of hairs since the start, I'm sure. So, I don't want to throw up any red flags or say the sky's falling or anything, but it's important that we take this momentum. We move forward with the same diligence and measured approach that's gotten us here. So definitely chalk it up to a team effort and everyone being on the same page, and just keep this momentum going, keep that at the forefront, and build this surplus up a little bit more, and we can take care of some of these things that we've been pushing aside for years. So thanks, everyone.
Nice, nicely said, Commissioner Picone. And it really, I absolutely agree. This has been a team effort, and lots of sacrificing going on. And I appreciate all the firefighters who are willing to take on this challenge along with us. And that's really how we got there. So, and, you know, the careful spending. And so, you know, I understand, I absolutely agree with you. This is the tip of the iceberg, and but we can celebrate today and move forward. Okay. Speaking of moving forward, let us continue with our meeting. Next on our list, discussion, consideration, and possible vote to approve the chief's report.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner,
did we have a motion to approve and to accept the audit as presented by the Hague Shady and Company?
we did not. I just kind of walked by that. It's not necessarily that we do that, but I'm very much happy to request, take a motion to approve and accept the Cumberland, the recommendations presented by Hague Shahady and Company. So is there a motion on the table?
Make a motion to accept.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Ashenbo. And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor of accepting the recommendations from our audit letter, the recommendation letter for the year ending June 30th, 2020, presented by Hague Shahady and Company.
And the audit itself.
And the audit itself.
Sure.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose? Passes 6-0. Okay. On to number 2, discussion, consideration, and possible vote to approve the chief's report from December of 2020. Chief, you're on.
Good evening. So attached in my report, you will find Cumberland Fire District responded to 403 calls for service the month of December. I also included the summary of calls for calendar year 2020. The Cumberland Fire District responded to 4,512 calls. And this number is significantly lower by almost 500 calls for service. And that is directly related to the pandemic. 19 firefighters are attending the Rhode Island Fire Academy class at the Cumberland Public Safety Center. This class is the NFPA 1041 fire instructor. This is a national certification that was paid for by the 2019 FEMA AFG grant. Once completed, many of these firefighters will continue to fire officer and then on to safety officer, all part of the grant. The equipment committee conducted field trials with vendors at the Rhode Island Fire Academy recently. And this is to go over, test out the new equipment that will be added to the fleet with the second part of our AFG grant that we received last year. For the future, we are looking for an AFG request to upgrade and replace our radio equipment. Our current inventory is 15 years old and is starting to fail. These radios are no longer able to be serviced with new parts. They are not intrinsically safe, and operability with mutual aid is being affected. And for example, on New Year's Day, I responded along with our Engine 41 to Burrillville. A Mayday, which is a firefighter assistance call, was reported as Engine 4 arrived, and they could not hear that transmission due to the lack of operability. The firefighter ended up being safe, but this is unacceptable. When I arrived, I had to stand next to the incident commander, so our firefighters, our Cumberland firefighters inside, had communication with command. Communities such as Central Falls, Lincoln, Woonsocket have all upgraded to this new equipment, as well as the Cumberland Police and the Cumberland EMS. They've upgraded since our original purchase years ago. Just in closing, I would like to inform the members of the committee that today started our second dose of vaccines with the Moderna at the Smithfield Pod. Cumberland Fire Department had a high turnout of individuals. This was not a mandatory requirement, but we had one of the highest turnouts for the vaccine amongst the surrounding communities. So I'd like to thank the firefighters for their participation. Any questions?
Chief, if I may,
Sure.
you've indicated the upgrading of the radios. Do you have a potential estimated cost of what that might be?
Sure. And so, with the AFG grant, what we end up doing when you're applying for these grants is you think of all possible scenarios, and you think of all of your apparatus, all the riding positions of each apparatus. And in total, we're still waiting for final word from Motorola Solutions, but in total, it's going to be over an $800,000 upgrade for all of our equipment, all of our riding positions. So the grant match of that would be nearly $80,000. So that's I worded that way on purpose. So we shoot high, and then of course, see what the grant review comes up with. So Motorola Solutions is a company that I had to mention because they're one of the few, if not the only, I should say, company that is compatible with the Rhode Island Communications Network. So, for example, a truck radio, just for one of the engines of the ladders, is about $21,000 when we're, so that truck radio would be capable to communicate with what I mentioned. Plus, it would have a built-in repeater to it. Just a portable radio, which is the riding positions. And a riding position defined by the government is 4 positions per company, is $8,000 per radio. So when we start running numbers like this, that's where we come up with the 800,000, and that's where it becomes a high priority to see if we can receive a grant, because now we're talking almost a truck or better than a purchase of a new fire engine, if not a ladder truck at that point. So these radios have not been upgraded. Like I said, in the 15 years, we've gotten a couple of new ones, but nothing where we can say we're operational. Many communities surrounding us have requested this grant, and they've all been successful based on the items that I've mentioned. So I think it would be the prudent step to and the right direction for a AFG grant. So.
If I could just say something in support of this grant, being a volunteer across the river, well, with the bridge being closed right now, we just had a pretty large fire over on Division Street, and obviously Cumberland Hill, Station 4, was probably the 4th or 5th truck to pull up, and having that radio communications is essential, as the chief said, but they can't, and it's always an issue. when, we're literally Cumberland and Lincoln, as they say, side by each. And as he said, every town around Cumberland that I'm aware of, working, right in Manville there, little old Manville, a tiny district with a $300,000 budget, we were able to get the AFG grant for our radios through the town as well. And I think it's, the previous, the previous leader left our current chief hanging with this albatross of the radios not having the current frequencies to communicate with districts where they're being called to Burrville and all over the state, northern part of the northern region for mutual aid. And if they can't communicate with somebody who's calling a Mayday, and if they're being called to be the RIT team, which is Rapid Intervention Team, and they can't perform that intervention because of, stupid radio, it's a life safety issue. And the last thing we want to have on our hands is a life safety issue. And I'm pretty sure, like he said, from what I've heard from, just doing the small amount of volunteering I do, everyone I've ever heard of has been approved for this AFG grant. It sounds like a lot of money, $800,000, almost $1 million. But when you get them, and I listened to the fire over on Prudence Island the other night, Chief. I'm not sure if you heard the same thing, but everyone's trying to get on this new East 1 channel. They didn't have it. A bunch of boats are pulling up to try and put these fire houses. 3 houses are burning. $1 million houses are burning, and they're trying to find the same radio frequency, but nobody had it. So as these houses are burning, they couldn't talk to each other. So they keep changing frequencies, so this is what has to be fixed. And I think I give Chief Anderson credit for being, jumping on this with the grant committee, for having this, the foresight to get this going as soon as possible. So I support this initiative 100%.
Madam Chair, we all support the chief in regards to obtaining that grant, and we thank the foresight and the efforts to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Santoro. I agree with you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Jones.
had an opportunity to sit with the chief just as a crossover to the capital expenditure. We had a one-on-one about this issue. It seems that, departments can use a primary frequency once they're on scene, but it's not always a clean thing to do because you have other dispatch information going out from our dispatcher to other emergencies in the area, so that somewhat gets clogged in the communications end of things. So I think and the chief can correct me or add to it, that what happens is you're assigned a operation frequency to get you off the dispatch frequency, so that all companies that are coming in have communications for that particular incident. Correct, Chief Anderson? Is that basically the basic idea of the whole thing? Is up on 800 megahertz, right?
Sure. Yeah. So the 800 megahertz is the RISCON. It's the Rhode Island Secured Operating Channel. We actually have the tower right in Cumberland. So that for infrastructure wise, that's a great thing. So yes, so that will get us off the main channel. While we're operating at that fire, we can have dedicated frequencies for the fire, for command. And another thing to mention is 30% of our town does not have fire hydrants. So that's a mutual aid, although it doesn't happen often. We're typically, we have the proper, staffing and response by the firefighters to keep our fires small in those areas, and we're able to fight them aggressively. If we were to have a larger fire, one of the larger homes in the northern end of town in that area that had the 30% unprotected by fire hydrants, we would have to call a mutual aid tankers. And so that's a whole nother process. That's a whole nother avenue that you would have to communicate. You don't want to clog up your primary frequency on that. You don't want to clog up your fireground frequency. So this 800 megahertz would really open many more opportunities for us to perform our job safely and more efficiently.
And also, what, say, we're heading for the ideal situation of for each position, for a portable radio for each position. But what is the match? I had it my notes here, but the match that the district would be required on the federal match. Do you have that with us? You don't have to have it right now, Nick, but roughly what is it fittable within our budget and operating line items?
Sure. So that's something we were talking to Steve about. I'm sorry. Let me rewind. I was talking to Steve about this topic because when at first when we're adding up the amount of mobile radios and then at one point we get up to 54 portables at $8,000 a piece. I started to sweat a little bit. I was relieved hearing from the other communities that they typically get that. But what happens is the government will obviously look through your grant. They'll see what you request. Obviously, and that's what I mentioned to Commissioner Kutsiani. You kind of shoot high and then see what they give you. I put it for 3 frequency radios, tri-band radios, and they might give us dual band. So that's how you adjust the numbers. But talking to Director Greenhall, we were thinking between the radio box fees that we have that we collect off of the radio boxes, combination of that along with our because we seem to be in good shape there, along with our equipment upgrades and our we typically do when we're budgeting. We typically do put some money aside. This year happened to be for deficit reduction. In previous years, we had grant match. So we do feel that that number would be attainable. The rough estimate, and we haven't submitted the grant, is about $800,000, which our match would be about $80,000 to get those upgrades. And that's not a sure thing. That you don't really get that final number till they weave through all the grants and so. We certainly have many areas that we need to attend to. So I do feel that it is within our reach. And Steve, if you have anything to add to that.
No, like Nick said, we did discuss it, and we did discuss about increasing the radio box fees to help along with that. So we're keeping that in mind as well, because that can certainly be used as match for it.
Any further questions for the chief?
I was just to finish up, Cindy. The discussion I had with the chief, I was impressed with the hard work. He has a subcommittee set up for this, for the researching these different sources. But I don't know, Chief, did you want me to give a shout out? You gave me a list of names. Is that appropriate, do you think, of your members on there to recognize them at this point, or it's up to you?
Yeah. So I'm very proud of all the hard work that the committee members, and it's just not. It's really not even just limited to the grant committee. Between union leadership to just institutional knowledge amongst the department, it's really another group effort with the firefighters to kind of get this rough draft. And the other person to mention is Kerry Smith, the administrative assistant. she has overseen the last few years with the grants also. So yeah, I mean, it's a little too. You can certainly mention them for all the hard work they're doing with AFG fiscal year 19, but certainly proud of them, and I thank them for their efforts and this future grant opportunity.
Would you like me to say, you gave me 8 names of, the key players, but like you said, there's input. You want me to go down the list quick? Or?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay, it's Chief Anderson, Captain Eric Di Rosario, Acting Lieutenant Greg Jones, no relation, Firefighter Aaron Babikian, Firefighter Dave Sinkmars, Firefighter Emily Andrews, Firefighter Jeff Bonner, Firefighter John Rye, REI, Lieutenant Paul Berry, and one on the end there, Nick, I'm missing. Perhaps you have that last one you recall, but not, right. I've got something scribbled there above Kerry's name because Kerry assists greatly on the grant writing, but I'm missing someone.
I
found it, Stephen Stasi.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
That's a complete list, but I appreciate what they're doing for the district. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome. Thank you for acknowledging. Thank you for acknowledging everything. Everyone who is working on the committee. Nice job. Any further questions or comments? Can I have a motion, please, to accept the chief's report from December 2020?
Motion to accept the chief's report.
Motion to accept by Commissioner Santoro. Is there a second?
Acting chief's report. Sorry, acting chief.
Acting chief, you're right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pacone. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor for accepting the acting chief's report from December 2020, say aye.
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 Or raise your hand. Nay. Passes 6-0. Thank you. Next on our list, discussion, consideration, and possible vote to approve the finance director's report from December 2020. Steve, you want to take over?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. It's the first meeting in the year. I forwarded out the financial report to everybody already, so if anybody had any questions, I'd be happy to answer. It speaks for itself. Our collections to date as of December was 76%, which is in line with where we were last year. And our expenses at the halfway mark, December 31st, we are about 49%, so we're almost right on with what the budget is. But I don't want to mislead you. That is looking very good, but because of COVID, we have some other factors that could be factoring in the future. So I just want to make sure that I bring that to your attention because I would be at fault if I didn't. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Steve, when you say you don't want to give us any, false leads, buddy, are you saying we're in good shape leading towards another good year?
Last year, we did have, we were at less than 50%, much less. I think we were about 40-something%, 45, 44%. So I don't expect a surplus as significant as last year, the 600,000, which wiped out our deficit. But I wouldn't say we're going to have a loss. Let me put it that way. I foresee that we will be still in the black, but from what I can see right now. But
Good.
I don't think
Without,
bigger surplus as last year.
and you're hopefully anticipating this without having to get a tan this year.
Yes, absolutely. And we save money on that as well, yes.
That's great.
That's it's a wonderful news. It's great. When does the next CBA expire? I know this is not on the agenda, but
I believe,
About halfway through right now. I think another year and a half.
And I have it right in front of me. It actually expires June 30th, 2022.
That's when it expires, Steve.
Yes.
yeah,
But
expires June 2022.
yes.
yes.
June 30th, yes.
So at the end of June 21, we're fingers crossed. We're hoping that we're going to have a minimal, surplus. And that would be, I mean, do you think that, Steve, with your experience working with the state, that will keep them happy and off of our backs? Was the something advisor?
The Auditor General?
There you go.
Yes.
That's the one.
I've already spoken to them, and they're very happy that the deficit is completely wiped out because we had submitted it originally. I believe it was a 4 or 5 year plan.
Yeah.
They were able to do it in the 1 year, so they were very pleased with that.
Now, the 1.4 million the gentleman spoke about earlier, how many departments in the state of Rhode Island do you think actually have that, was it 15% or what is it? The amount of money he had actually put aside, and 1.4 million of our $8.5 million budget.
Have
How
that
many
down
people?
here somewhere.
Yeah, how many towns in the state, since you actually work there, Steve, actually have that much money in savings?
Actually, I can't answer that question. I can certainly pose that question to the Auditor General's office that monitors all the agencies. But I can't physically say how many have done that.
I mean, it sounds like a pretty lofty goal to have, $1.5 million sitting around in, reserves, just kind of not doing much. If we ever reach that point, I think we'd be investing it in stocks and bonds and 401ks and stuff first.
Right, and I don't want to be the Grim Reaper, but because we have so many upgrades that need to happen,
Yeah.
And I don't want to be premature by saying that, but we've having a lot of equipment failures, and as Vinny had said, as well as building improvements that have been put off that need to be tended to. So
yeah.
I don't want to be premature to say that we can reach that at this time.
No, we've got too many things that need to be, the albatross in the corner, and we've got 6 fire trucks that need,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, and keep in mind the district's still pretty new. We're only, a few years into inception, so it's going to take time to build up that much of a surplus.
Yes.
Alrighty, so I make a motion to accept the finance chairman's report.
For December
Finance.
2020. Motion to accept the finance
Finance director.
finance
Right?
director's report for December 2020 by Commissioner Santoro. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Second by Commissioner Kutsiani. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor of accepting the finance director's report of December 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Passes 6-0. Okay, last one on the list, discussion, consideration, and possible vote to approve subcommittee assignments. So you all received your assignment, and I will read them off. The Bylaws Committee, Commissioner Kutsiani, Chair, Commissioner Santoro and Commissioner Jones as part of that subcommittee. The Personnel Subcommittee, Commissioner Santoro as chair, Commissioner Hogan and Commissioner Kutsiani as part of that subcommittee. Finance, Commissioner Bacone, chair, Commissioner Kutsiani and Commissioner Ashambo as part of that subcommittee. Capital expenditures, Commissioner Jones, chair, Commissioner Santoro and Commissioner Bacone on that subcommittee. Negotiations, because we will have to start January of 2022 before. So Commissioner Hogan is the chair. Commissioner Bacone and Commissioner Ashambo are part of that subcommittee. And at this point in time, that's what we have. Any questions or discussions on this list?
Madam Chair, just to repeat, I was writing down quick here. Bylaws is Kuchiani chair.
Yes.
And Jones. Bylaws,
Dana.
it was last term, right? That was
Dana, Madam, the chairperson sent out an email to us mid-afternoon with a listing of the subcommittees with the various members and the chairs. I don't know whether you received that.
Yeah, I did. I just want to get it on record, and I was writing it down here quick, Phil, so. And then personnel is Santoro as chair,
Yep.
Hogan, and what was the third one?
Kutsiani.
Same as last time, Dana.
Okay, and the finance is my cousin Vinnie Picone,
Yes.
and Archie. But who's the middle one on that one?
Commissioner Kutsiani.
And capital improvements, Jones, Santoro, and Picone.
Yeah.
Negotiating, I missed the middle one, Archie's on there. Hogan's the chair, and who's the other?
Bacone.
Good.
Okay. Any further questions? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. Oh, wait, I need a motion. Is there a motion on the table to approve the subcommittee assignments?
Motion approved.
Second,
Motion by Commissioner Bacone. Is there a second?
second,
Second by Commissioner Santoro. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor of approving the subcommittee assignment, say aye.
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 Oppose? Passes 6-0. Is there any public input this evening? Okay. All right. Is there a motion on the table to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Ashambo. Any seconds?
second.
Second by Commissioner Santoro. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0. Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. It's nice seeing you all because we haven't seen each other in a really long time.
6 weeks.
I know.